Hello, everyone, and welcome to Just Unsecure. So, everyone just been talking about backup strategy. We got an email from one of our fans regarding backup strategy. So, shout out to you for sending us that email. Well, me and O has been talking about it, and like, yeah, let's do one video on backup strategy. So, we're gonna be talking about a successful way of, you got it, doing a backup strategy. So join us. My name is Babs. I'm a co-host. Oh. And today we'll be talking to you about backup strategy, building a successful backup strategy. So I think everybody wants to know, first and foremost, why is a backup important to us? From my own perspective, anybody that wants to ask that question needs to sit down and go through the reason why you need a backup strategy, especially in the IT world like we're living in right now, and especially cybersecurity. You must focus on backup strategy. And foremost is that your backup strategy must be so important to your business for your business to be able to live on. And why I say that is a backup strategy is not the only way, one of the ways to avert a business falling apart in case of a cyber attack. Okay, so remember, data is key, and that's what the backup strategy is trying to prevent you from collapsing in case, again, cyber theft occurs, the data is stolen, you can still recover and things like that. Hey, what's your take on that?
Yeah, whether you like it or not, part of the major reason people should consider backup is just because of whether it's natural disaster or you have human error, or, or the common thing right now is cyber attacks, ransomware,
Mhm.
and people are working remotely as well. We have seen data center region not available for a prolonged time. So
Yeah.
that has made it also critical that all of us should consider whether we have a backup strategy or not. So for an organization, it's not even something that needs to be explained as an importance or not, but how important, how critical it is, and how to even select what strategy or what data you need to back up. That's what we are discussing today. So the question is, do we need it? Absolutely yes.
Yep, I agree with you. And what is the main rule? Everybody always says there's this particular rule about backup, and everybody says, "Oh, it's the 3-2-1 rule." So, to those that don't know what the 3-2-1 rule, I'm sure everybody's going, "Well, is there a 3-2-1 rule for backup?" But absolutely. And I will shorten it before we go through the entire process. But the 3-2-1 rule is basically making sure that you have three three backups of all data. One is going to be staying obviously on site. The second is going to be based on storage. And the third is likely going to be in the cloud. But we're going to obviously go through all that with you today. So let's start from the first one. Apart from the three, before you get to the 3-2-1, I would always say ensure you have a backup plan. A backup plan is, again, the root of everything. Just making sure you have a plan in place for your backup. Ensure that from the beginning in that plan, you're able to say you need to do things like a risk assessment and a business impact. And the reason why I started from that perspective in the backup plan is in the risk assessment, you're able to identify all the threats and vulnerabilities that could occur when you do a risk assessment. And you also know the risk you're taking on, especially knowing what you're likely going to lose if a breach or something malicious occur if you did a risk assessment. Now, the backup impact analysis is to kind of put a cost to that breach or that risk you've identified. Again, there's so much deeper ways to analyze risk, but the fact that every data has a cost and how it impacts the business is what you should be looking at from a business impact analysis. Okay, if you lose five people's data from, should I say, from an healthcare perspective, what is the damage?
Hmm.
But if you lose the same five in a financial institution, then definitely it might be worse. But if you lose five from another, not so, again, doesn't contain any malicious, doesn't contain any regulatory information or PII data, which is privacy information, then obviously those kind of risk, those kind of impact might be calculated less because it means there's no person who owns that data. Nothing can be retrieved or nothing can be said to will be used maliciously just because that data has leaked. So that's why we do a form of a business a risk assessment as well as the business impact analysis for you to be able to put everything in perspective before you start going further with your backup plan. Do you have any other one?
Absolutely. Without repeating whatever you said, business impact analysis and risk assessment should be the starting point. Uh, One of the critical things that you need to also consider in your backup plan should also be the schedule. Or if you come from any other part of the world, they call it schedule. So it
Yeah.
should be your schedule. It should be your schedule, whatever you call it, whatever. So because if you don't have proof schedule, you're probably going to miss the mark. You must know
Yep.
when to back up what. And some of these, whether it's risk assessment or it's business impact or this schedule, is based on requirements. Sometimes these are internal requirements and sometimes these are regulatory requirements, right? So you must say,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to back up every fortnight. I'm going to keep this data for this number of years and all that. So that is critical. Then the other thing is how you're going to do it must be in your business plan. That means you're probably going to say, I'm going to say, oh, who is responsible for
Yeah.
this? Who is going to be involved? What is going to be involved? What software am I going to use? What program am I going to use? Maybe you want to go to that level of detail. But one you cannot miss, apart from who is involved, will be the location. Because
Absolutely.
some requirements actually expect you to distribute this data to say, oh, they must be this number of kilometers apart. You must keep
Yeah.
some in a vault. It might be your own specific regulatory requirement. It might just be a standard, maybe some things you are compliant to, like PCI DSS, what have you, or ISO, whatever is detailed. So you must be able to know that. And then remember, we talked about data sovereignty as well. So
Yeah.
that might also be a guide to say, oh, where am I going to keep my backup? So,
Yeah.
and the other one, and the last one that I think you might probably want to be in that program as well will be your test, your procedure
Yes.
for testing. So you must be able to have procedure for testing, for reviewing, and updating your backup plan.
Absolutely. I think you've nailed everything, especially from a data backup plan perspective. Another area I would also look at is the form of storage, because many people always ask me, okay, yeah, well, what would you recommend, hardware or software? What should there? But what people don't realize, there are actually three different types of storage. Now you can actually have the hardware, you can have the software, and now they have the cloud. Because you can have the hardware that is obviously in your private, your own data center, and software. Now you have companies out there that actually provide their own form of data backup only from a software perspective. And now you have the cloud, where everything now, most people back up because it's cheaper. To be honest, it's cheaper to back up in the cloud. However, there's always a catch. Once it's cheaper, the more data you put in the cloud in the long run becomes expensive. So, like we said, you should be able to know the criticality of what you need to back up. Always try and back up the essentials in either case, whether hardware, software, or cloud, but know your environment, know what you want from a security perspective as well, what you're sure you'll be able to recover quickly. Don't go put something in the cloud because it's cheaper, but when it's time to retrieve it, you have limitations. Same for hardware, same for software. You have to be able to ensure that when it's time to restore from backup, you are able to do so seamlessly. And that's why OO spoke about testing, ensuring that when you test, yes, you're able to back up. The more volume of data you get, the harder it will become to back up. That's why it's always good to test regardless. You can do it bi-monthly, quarterly, but ensure you test when you back up. I also give another thing I would want to say is testing is critical. Even I mentioned it earlier, is if you don't test what you back up, then you are backing up to fail. Because the whole point of you testing your backup is to ensure that when something goes wrong, you can recover seamlessly. So
Correct.
again, backup options, hardware, software, and I put another one, cloud as well. And that also falls into the narrative which I was talking about, which is storage. So for storage, we have the backup storage options, which includes disk, tape, and cloud. So most people tend to want to do tape because obviously tape is more locally based. That means it has to be offsite. So, and most people say, "Oh, let's have tape is offsite," and from a obviously cybersecurity perspective, what is not linked to the internet is is classified as secure. But another thing I always tell people is, again, back to what I said for the backup option, you have to ensure you test whenever. So you can have some tapes out there stored offsite, but you need to test as well. So
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to elaborate on that one.
absolutely. Just few things that also some people are probably thinking as part of their strategy. What which of the options of this storage should I take? And this can fit different use cases, and as well you can do a mix and match. I'll say that. One thing
Yeah.
is if you need it to be really fast, you're probably going to be use disk. If you want your backup frequency and the volume of data and you want to be really fast, you don't want your system to hang in the middle. From my experience,
Yeah.
use disk. Disk is expensive, but that is local and easily you can put it
Mm-hmm.
almost side by side with your servers. So you can do quick
Yep.
disk backup and then later on transfer it to tape if you need it for archiver.
Yep.
Before we used to use tape, but right now, because of the volume of data, it can take days even before one cycle of
Yep.
backup complete. So you don't want to do that. You want to back up to disk first and then quickly back up to tape for the long time archiver. Recently, I was talking to a particular organization that needs their backup to be kept for 7 years. So
Oh,
one full backup app to be kept for 7 years. So you can't definitely keep that on the disk. You're probably
yeah.
going to keep that on a tape or something that is not that is immutable like that. But also cloud comes into play here. Why cloud will not be your primary backup for on-premise workload, but for cloud workload, cloud could be your primary backup. I say this with a lot of caution, right? So
Yep.
cloud backup, as Babs have mentioned, is determined by the quantity of data that you have and your bandwidth.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So if you have a very good pipe, I can say, "Okay, why not? Start from cloud." Or if you have something in between, because most cloud provider now have a replication solution in between. They can help you to replicate or do backup locally and help you to upload later. Like that means do a staging one that you would do for tape as well. backup to disk,
Yeah.
and that disk automatically connects to cloud. That means you are busting into the cloud to do a longer backup. So you can do a mix and match of all these backup storage options.
Yeah, I think you missed one about the cloud. You said if mentioned, but you forgot to mention if they have a deep pocket. If they have a deep pocket and money is not an issue, yeah, they can definitely go ahead and just put everything in the cloud and dump it there. If your pocket is
Yeah,
non-endless, should I
the,
say?
yeah. So
So
sometimes that do not have the capacity to manage local backup, I encourage them
yeah,
to put it in the cloud. Why?
moving
Because
cloud. Yeah,
operation wise, they could solve the problem. And then in the cloud as well, because if you don't want to back up on disk on premise, you're probably going to spend a lot of money as well because you have to do tiering of storage. That is all that
yeah.
kind of
But
conversation.
but But from that perspective as well, even though yes, I do recommend the cloud, I always tell people that you also, again, it's your data. You need to understand your data and your regulatory requirements needed. There's some
Absolutely.
data that, yeah, there's some data that are taken from, for example, maybe America or Europe that cannot be saved in Asia. Or there's some data that in Asia that are not going to be allowed to be stored in America and vice versa. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it all depends on your data. So all security people out there, it's look at your data, the regulatory requirements that is required, and then that would determine, give you some kind of focus on what you need to focus on from your backup strategy as well. So moving on, I always get this question. Okay, so what are the ways to ensure we implement a backup schedule? And to be honest, there are only three types of backup schedule that we know of. Some people might come up with the other other ones, but for us, as far as I've been working in cybersecurity, we've known only three, which is full backup, incremental, and differential. And I'll give you the step. The full backup, like the name just mentioned, is basically you're backing up the entire system, everything, configuration, data, whatever it is, you're backing it up. No questions. No questions asked. Then incremental, as it says, the incremental, all you're doing is copies all the files that have changed since the previous backup. So basically, you back up. If anything changes between Monday and Friday, and you between Monday and Thursday, and you're backing up on Friday, you are only going to change whatever you backed up the last time that has changed. So just take notice of that. All the files that changed since the previous backup. Then for differential backup, those are the copies of all the files that changed since the last
Full
backup.
backup.
So exactly. So, and last full backup. So remember, if you're backing up, let's say all the files that have changed since the last full back. So if you back up monthly and there changes all the month to the next month, you're still going to back up everything. For the last full backup, you're backing up almost everything. The differential backup. That's why it's called
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that
Oh,
those are the three main for
yeah.
me. Yep.
So sometimes you could also break this down if you in the implementation strategy you say yes, I'm going to do full backup maybe at the end of every month, for instance. You can say yeah, I'm going to have one full backup. It depends on your requirement, as Barbara mentioned. One full backup at the end of the month. You can say, oh, incremental backup is going to be daily. That means I'm going to do daily. At the end of 1 week, I'm going to have this differential backup done. And then that differential backup will roll up into, at the end of the month, your full backup to update the full backup. You can strategize like that. But your incremental backup can be a daily backup. But then you need to
Yeah.
look at your availability of space and of this
Absolutely.
space and also your retention because it maps up. If we need to retain a monthly backup for 1 year, you know what that is going to be. That means it's going to be X times 12. And then you'll have
Hmm.
the differential backup as well as also incremental backup, which you're doing almost daily.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One of the
Absolutely.
things that you now need to, that I believe we should look at from now is now the next stage in your strategy, which is to build a recovery plan. So,
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
so uh, that is the ability to restore. Forget about
Yeah.
anything. That is, we are narrowing it down to backup. You know, we, another time we're going to talk about disaster recovery separate. So I know some of
Yeah.
you are probably asking, so what should this be? But your backup plan definitely is part of your disaster recovery plan. So you must find a way to be able to restore. And what needs to be done that you can retrieve this data. For example, if you back up to the cloud and your restore environment is on premise, when are you going to pull it
Yeah.
down?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
and if it's on tape, when are you going to request for the tape? So, how long will that take? Should be part of your plan. How long will it take for me to be able to get the data to restore? And even if hardware is involved, how long is it going to take me to get a new hardware to restore into? So that should be your backup plan. If you even need to
Yeah.
have a
That's
standby asset, you need to have it. Please go ahead,
Yeah, that's
Flash.
a very good point. That's a very good point because there's sometimes some people do backup plan and maybe put it on tape, and the tape is like 3 4 hours away. And when when it's time to do a recovery and the business critical assets production, and you want to do a backup or your recovery, and you're waiting 4 hours for critical data to be recovered, nah, that's the beginning of failure. So I just wanted that was a very good point made there. So for another thing for the recovery plan, I would say is there's no point having a recovery plan if all the employees don't know that they need to do something during a major incident or a backup recovery. So all employees, in my perspective, need to be trained in basically is essential to helping staff understand the backup strategy and what to expect in a recovery situation, because when it's time to recover and everybody don't know their roles and responsibility, then there's no point having a plan if everybody does not know what they need to do. So i
Absolutely.
always tell i always tell all organizations, first of all, know your the key people within the plan. And everybody within the plan must ensure that they know the roles and responsibility when it comes to activating that plan. So a recovery plan is really about, like you said, there's more about looking into the disaster recovery, which we'll take in another episode. So everybody stay tuned. We'll talk about that next. And but for me, you cannot scale down employee training,
Yeah.
because an employee trained a good employee trained to know how to recover your data is saving the organization time and, more importantly, costs. That's the two main things: time and money. Most organizations, that's their bread and butter.
Exactly. So, what's the
Okay.
purpose of you doing all the backup, doing all the edit, paying everything, and then nobody knows what to do?
Exactly. It's pointless. That's pointless if they don't do that. So yeah.
I think we've beaten this very well, which is has to do with testing. again,
Always.
again,
Always.
that's why we are mentioning it again. Is test, test, and test, because this is what can guarantee your recovery. Any other thing that we've talked about right here, backup is very good. Make sure your backup is nice, but without testing it, and this is where most of us has failed, because we did not even test our backups that we've done, whether it's weekly. And this can be, you might not do a big bang, you might not do all the applications. You might choose to say, okay, oh, every week I'm going to test each application in my environment. or every other day
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to test restore, but it must be there. It must be documented. The schedule must be there. And it must align with your business, whether it's a statutory requirement, whether it's even a common business requirement, or whether it's a certification requirement. So you must know that if a frequency, for example, ISO says you must have a restore done every quarter, right? You must stick to it. Make
Yep.
sure that you do that as well. Apart from the fact that you need to stick to it to ensure that you can validate whatever you've backed up and the system or the organization can actually restore activity from it.
Yeah, I think for me, you've nailed it. I won't buttress much on it. Testing, review what you've done, test, review. There's nothing more to add to that. Not to flog it, because once you don't test, you test to fail. If
Cleared.
that's my that's it. If you don't test, you test to fail. So that's it.
So, th-
Okay.
so
So
that is
yeah.
our backup strategy. That is what we have been doing, and that is what we thought you should know on how to plan your backup strategy as well. Any last word for our viewers?
Well, me, that's it. Hope you guys are watching all our videos, and again, thank you once again to our fan who actually sent us an email. Says we shouldn't say his name online, so but don't worry, we'll keep that personal. And yeah, please join us in watching all our videos. And again, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We're here for you. Show us all the support. We need all the support we can get. And don't forget to email us at juteam@justunsecure.com. And follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you very much, and hope to hear from you again.
Thank you.